the stories behind the music about famous artists, famous mixers, and how they might have interacted to create something great that we know and love today, but how it got there, and opinions that may have been differing opinions, and just how the mixer navigated that, or how the artist, had an insecurity situation that then played into whatever. I love these stories. Manny Marroquin talking about how he interacted with John Mayer when they made Gravity is a really great story. This whole interview is great. It's about 2 hours and 36 minutes. So I'm giving you this part of it that really hits home for me and made me feel like this is how you have to deal with things as a mixer and as an artist too. There's a lot of benefit we can all take from this. This clip right here is fair use for teaching purposes. Fair use for teaching purposes. Here we go.
At night, John comes in. First time I met him, he comes in. I play him the mix, and he's like, "Man, thank you. This is great. Call Steve. He's like, hey man, I love it. This is great. He probably obviously didn't know who I was or whatever. He's like, man, we need Manny to do more songs, right? So then the second time he hung up, goes and asked me to play it again, and he goes, man, what do you have on my vocal? I'm like, I don't know. Let me see. and I looked at the channel and I'm like, and then I go in the tools and I'm like, man, I don't have anything on your vocal. And he was like, whoa, what do you mean you don't have anything? I actually don't have anything. Like, you don't have a reverb or a delay or harmonize? I'm like, no, it's dry. And I couldn't believe that either. It wasn't even a conscious thing. It was just more of a natural, like, this is how it felt good. And he's like, really? And this is the insecurity kicks in for every artist, right? And he was like, really? You don't think we need something on it? So at this point, your left brain is engaged because you should, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't think so, man. It feels great to me. I don't know if you need it, but listen, of course, we'll try whatever you want. No, leave it like that. Let me just take a CD and take it in the car, right? So fast forward, I don't know, 6 months. We finished the album. He's shooting a video for Waiting on the World to Change. And he calls me from the video shoot. He's like, man, I'm playing the album in the back while I'm doing the video and in between takes. And, Gravity, man, I just want to revisit that. Can you send me 2 versions? I want to do one with like a 480 like reverb and then AMS reverb. And let me just listen to those. I'm like, okay, cool. So I sent him 2 versions, one with, and calls me back. He's like, man, I think I like the AMS reverb on it. Let's just stick with that. And I'm like, all right, cool. So he plays the album, right? He's got it done and plays it for Donnie Einer in his office, right? The president of the label at the time. So Gravity comes on and he's like, and he's telling me this story and he's pretending he's Donnie. He's like, hey, man, wait. And he yells out of his office, calls for his assistant. It's like, bring me that CD, the Gravity CD, blah, 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 and puts in the CD and goes, that's your record, don't with it. And it was the first mix, right? And he goes, really? That's it's different, man. What you got is different. This is the record. Put this one out. So then he calls me. He's like, hey, I'm leaving Donnie's office and he wants to put Gravity the way we had it before. And I got to tell you, it makes me really uncomfortable, but I'm going to roll with it. And then you fast forward 5 years later and he always brings this up like, man, listen, that's the moment I try to fight what was supposed to be and not what it was meant to be, like from your gut. And from that moment on, he, it was a great relationship because he started to trust, and because I didn't make that decision based on anything, but I mean, if you analyze it and break it down on why that works is Gravity, it's heavy. It's supposed to kind of hit you, the first word that comes out. Gravity should be right in your face and it should be heavy and it should kind of round, fill the spectrum and that snare and that kick is just, so 3 things, snare, kick, and boom, Gravity. The moment you start adding any sauce to it, then Gravity goes kind of away from it. So, I mean, again, when you analyze it, it kind of makes sense. But at the time, for an artist to be like, wait a minute, this just doesn't, that's not the right way to do it. It's a constant reminder that there's no rules, whatever feels right.
Yeah, and I think for me, the key to that story is when he asks you what's on the voice, you were like, check it out, you'll never believe it, man. It's totally dry. Like, you had no idea. You put the vocal up at some point and it was working, and so you didn't touch it.
Exactly.
End of story. And you don't
Yep.
remember doing it. It's not
No.
about anything other than what it felt like.
And that's the I like to think that that's more my approach. As I'm as needed type of. I'm not. Hey, the kick should have this, the vocal should have that, the bass should have, would have, could have. It's like, hey, just go with a fresh perspective every time I throw faders. I always say when I throw the faders up, let's just, sometimes I don't even like to listen to the song beforehand, just because I want that emotion just to kind of take over, that sort of right brain working, your gut, and then maybe you analyze it a little better. And but it's just that I've always thought, when you kind of, whether you're in the box or not, you're making things based on emotion, right? Making changes and decisions based on emotion. Sometimes that's easier said than done, right? Because sometimes you may be having a bad day, and you got into an argument with your partner or your kids, or road rage coming in the tough streets of LA. You never know. Or you may be feeling amazing because it's a Friday and you're gonna go away for the weekend. Whatever that emotion you have, internal emotion, that's gonna reflect whether you like it or not on your mix. And I think the key is knowing yourself on what state of mind you're in, and how you manipulate yourself. I was gonna say how you mind yourself. I don't know if you run with it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so that's it's all about manipulating your mindset and helping you get there. And sometimes it helps you, and sometimes can get in the way. And when that's when does that help you or hurt you, type of thing. And I think it's more of a psychology game that you play with yourself on every single song you work on.
And you'd play it differently if you mix the same song again from scratch.
100%.
The first thing you do sends you down whatever road you're going to be on for that mix.
Yep. It's like, I can imagine if you're playing a basketball game, there's no two basketball games ever the same.
No. Man, think about doubleheaders in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You get crushed by 20 runs and come back and crush the other team by 20, and all you've done is change pitchers, and they were all pitching well that day. Like, it makes no sense.
All the different variables, right? All the different pitcher to the state of mind to the sun or shade or lights, and I mean there could be whether it's 20 or 20,000 different variables that and each one may be just a tiny brick, but you stack enough of those bricks, right, and now it becomes a wall.
Yeah, it does become a wall. That is what you get if you stack a bunch of bricks, or you get a pile of bricks.
A pile of bricks.
If you don't use mortar, it's just a pile of bricks.
Yeah, back in the day,
Well, but that's not true either. They got the dry fit walls.
Yeah, man.
In fact, we got a well, and it's all dry fit stone. There's no mortar in there. So I'm talking as I often do. But I think it's really important. And I think like one of my favorite ways to think about it is, like, for so long in science, they thought, like, if you knew everything, you would know what was coming next. Like, the way to predict the future is if you knew everything that had happened up until that moment, because it was all based on rules. And then all the quantum physics dudes are like, nope, completely random. There's some possibilities, and could be... And that's what's happening all day, every day in any creative endeavor.
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying it's because of quantum physics, so in the comments, go easy. There is so much random stuff. Like the phone rings that will completely change your perspective on the next thing you're going to do on that song.
Absolutely. And that's why, sometimes I have the TV on because that kind of gets me in and out. And that's why I tend to do a lot of sports, because you don't follow a storyline, you just follow a score. So it's much easier not to pay attention to it. But whenever I feel like I need a split-second mental break, boom, I look at it. I may turn the commentator on for maybe 2 seconds, and I go right back to it. It's almost like a constant reset.
There's a million variables that will influence your state of mind, and being in control of all of them is actually a little ridiculous. It's kind of insane to think you even can. But the truth is, you almost have to embrace all of it and understand that whatever's going on in here is going to determine what you do. So you have to sort of do things to put yourself in a relatively open-minded state every day, is kind of the way I look at it. In other words, like if I'm in an open-minded state, I'll be able to take influence from whatever I'm hearing in a mix and make it do what I want it to do, just kind of naturally. In other words, make it do what it wants to do. And that to me is what I want it to do. In other words, it's always easier to make a mix sound like what it was supposed to sound like, what it was meant to sound like, by what it is. Don't try to force it into anything, and be able to always be totally objective, and sometimes don't do what things are supposed to do. I mean, that's the biggest takeaway. That's what I started wanting to share with you guys, and it just drifted into something that I talk about all the time, which is the mental aspect of mixing and how important it is. You know, he got to the thing about, he always has something on in the background, which I've mentioned before, and is very critical. A movie you've seen 100,000 times, you know, is a good one too, because you don't have to follow it. You don't have to watch it. You know what's coming next, so you can break away from it. Whereas if there's something you haven't seen, you might be too sucked into it you have to keep watching. Whereas if it's something you've seen, you can jump away from it. Or something sports related where you just follow the score, you don't even need to hear it. But just that little breakaway and then come back gives you that fresh perspective that everyone who's a great mixer is always looking for. You're looking for doing what you need to do and getting a break from it for fresh perspective and then coming right back. It doesn't have to be a long time. It just needs to be that reset. And you can get that in a number of ways. That's super critical. But in addition, that part about the artist being insecure, how important is that? In other words, that's a common thing. All artists are like that. And Manny had to be somebody who's not gonna, I mean, he's willing to do what the artist wants, because that's ultimately what you also have to do if you want to. You can't tell an artist no, but you also got to make them realize they're just being insecure about it. In other words, like, it's always going to be that way, where there'll be some insecurity that comes into play. And then as a mixer, you can do one of two things. You could either say, no problem, I'll do whatever you want. Or you could be like, listen, you're just being insecure about this. And this sounds great as it is. And because it sounds great, I'm only changing it because you're asking me to. But if you hired me and I'm putting my everything into every mix I do, and my gut's telling me this is the way it's supposed to be, because ultimately that's what Manny did when he made the mix, then John, just knowing that there's something not the way it's typically done, made him question it and made him worry and made him think there should be more there. So he forces something into it, and by being like, you should add these two, try one with this reverb and one with this reverb. And then if it wasn't for Donnie, the president of the label, to be like, hey, this is not as good as the original mix without all that. It's better this way, because that Donnie at that moment was just about the emotion, listening to it totally dry, being like, this is way more impactful. And that, luckily, John was listening to that. He was open-minded and able to be like, you know what? Manny thought it was better this way. Donnie thinks it's better this way. Maybe I'm wrong as the artist, and he let it go. And then Gravity became what Gravity became. And like Manny said, that was the moment John learned to trust Manny, and it built their relationship into what it was. This is a very common thing. Some artists always think they know what's right, and they need to trust a mixer. They need to trust an outside ear to be like, look, we have the best intentions for what you're doing, and my gut mixed all these songs is telling me this is what's up. And Manny, luckily, you know, he didn't have to shove it down John's throat. John got there anyway. But some artists, I mean, they're going to second guess everything they do. They're always going to be insecure. And I'm trying to tell you guys, if it's you that's listening, don't be doing that. Have faith in the person you hired who you believe in. If you don't believe in them, then don't hire them. If you hire somebody who knows what they're doing, have faith. Have some faith. Because trust me when I tell you, artists are the ones that ruin the mix more than anybody else. They ruin their own mix. They hurt their own chances. I know, because I did it myself. But before I could mix, when I was coming up years back, and I used to hire people to mix, I used to have them make changes until I beat my mix into the ground. Just later listening to it being like, why did I tell them to make the vocals louder? The vocals are so loud now, and it's like they were better before. You find the old mix, you listen to it, you're like, man, this was dead on. The first mix was dead on. Why did I do that? A lot of people do it just because they need the control. They want the control. Some people do it because they genuinely think they're right. But let me say this, they're probably listening to their music on some whacked out stereo in some room, even if it's a great stereo, some room that's got ridiculous problems or something where they're not hearing what it really sounds like. So whenever they get off later listening to it in their car or something, they're like, why is this so loud? Oh, I told the guy to make it louder. Man, it's like, I did that to my own songs so many times. So many of the first mixes that were done for me by different people who mixed it for me, even people who weren't like really professional, just people who knew what they were doing more than I did. That mix had something special going on. It had emotion, and I would ruin it more often than not. And it wasn't like I ruined it because I thought I want control and I'm going to ruin it. I ruined it because I thought I knew better, and I didn't. And that's because I was too close to it, probably, as the artist. It's a very common thing. So you hire somebody outside perspective, you trust them, or don't hire them. Bottom line, okay? So many gems in what they just said. So many. You could go down a different path every single day. You hear what they said about the basketball game? I've never heard a better analogy than the basketball game or the doubleheader game that Andrew Sheps and the doubleheader baseball thing is so true that they could shut you out 20-0, and then all of a sudden it flips. The next kid's what? You can't play two basketball games that are the same ever. They're never going to be exactly the same. There's too many variables. It's the same with mixing. There's so many variables, and so many things are tied up in the mindset. And the key, one of the biggest keys that Manny dropped, is you cannot think something's supposed to be a certain way when you go into mixing it. You need to be open-minded, and you need to just throw away everything you ever thought you knew about this gets this to sound good if I do this. That never works on a long-term basis. It might work on one song. It's not going to work the same way on the next song because, like I said, too many variables. Too many things are interacting. Too many different possibilities. So you cannot go about it the same way every time. This is another reason why mix tricks don't work. The way you get this to be good, do this, never works. It's always about the concept because you can apply concepts on different things constantly, whereas you can't do the same sound of different instruments always, like the same set of skill, blah, 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 EQ moves, compression. It's never going to work. Just do what they're doing. Manny goes in every mix and doesn't know what the kick drum should sound like until he starts mixing. Same with vocals, same with bass. And that's how you get a song like Gravity. Because if you heard what he said, sometimes it'll make perfect sense. Where you need something, if something's really heavy and you want it impactful, then don't sauce it all up. Make it where that thing is right in your face, which means less. It means almost nothing. Put nothing on it. It wasn't even a conscious choice. He probably just pulled the fader up and listened to it, maybe made it an EQ move or not, and loved it. That was it. So why mess with it? If you're not open-minded the whole way you're mixing, you'll get things to be great, and then you'll ruin them by doing too much. That's the thing. If you have a step process you always do, you'll ruin everything too much every time, in my opinion. Because what you'll wind up doing is, okay, now it's time to do the vocals. Let's do them. You wind up doing a whole list of stuff. Now let's do the bass. What I do to the bass is this. And then you do it, and now you've done a whole list of stuff. No, you should just be pulling it up and letting it tell you what to do. This is the key. Open mind, let it tell you what to do, and anytime you're remotely stumped where you don't know exactly what the next move is, break away, catch something else, catch something at the corner of your eye, some movie, some sports game, something. Just get something in there. Then come back. Now what do you hear? And is anything guiding you? Because that's what I do. I let it guide me. I let it pull me to wherever it wants me to go. So if I'm listening to the song and now I hear something, now I got to address that. I break away. No, I don't know what to be done. As soon as I don't know what to be done, I break away. And then I come back. Now what's there to be done? And as soon as you listen to the song, you listen through it and you don't know what to do, the whole song, you're done. You're done, man. If there's nothing left to do, that's how you know. You just go, I don't feel like I need to do anything else, and then you're done. It's not a question of it needs to be perfect. We're not striving for perfection. Perfection means void of emotion and void of feeling. You're just trying to get to the point where your brain says, I don't feel like there anything else needs to be done. That's it. That's where you're going for. And once you get there, don't overcook it. Like, don't keep going. That's what a lot of people do also. They keep going. So much here. I don't want to go forever, but watch this interview. This is one of the, I mean, they're fire. All of these are fire. The Andrew Sheps Talks to Awesome People thing, they're all fire. They're all great. Manny Marroquin, this is actually part 3. He's got others, and there's some other gems in there, and I may get to some of those at some point, but I'll leave it here. Throw something in the comments, anything you dug about this video. I really appreciate it. It helps out a lot, and there'll be tons of more videos to come. All right, subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button if you dug it. Evan Jaffe, Custom Cut Studios. You guys got this, all right? Open mind. You got this. Take it easy.